This program, while curated to help you improve your health, contains general advice and should not replace the individual advice of your medical practitioner.
We know as a society that this needs to shift.
And you want to be on a mission for the truth.
What a lot of us kind of collectively want right now is to feel better in the process while we're getting better.
Mindfulness is one of my favorite strategies.
Is there a way to apply sound as a technology for the treatment of things like depression?
Even just 5 minutes of time outdoors can have health benefits, help our mental health.
In life, it's normal to have ups and downs. But what do we do when we get stuck? I've always been fascinated by the healing journey. Why do some people get better while others fail to make the shift? In Season 2 of The Shift, we explore the intricate world of women's health and help you discover how to balance your hormones and understand yourself better so that you can truly thrive.
The menstrual cycle is a vital sign of female well-being.
My mum just used to say, "Oh, Nan, I'm so sorry. It's part of being a woman."
I would like to call to arms for women to know that their intuition isn't lying to them.
I'm Katherine Maslen, and this is The Shift. Welcome back. In part 1 of this episode, we looked at the many drivers of stress for us as women. You probably get the drift by now. Stress is important. We all experience it, and we can all change the way that we process it. So why do we tend to not want to address it?
Well, I think it has to do with a number of factors. What are we being modeled as children? What was the response to stress in the home that was learned from the parents overall? In our society, we actually reward stress and reward environments that are high stress. So when we look at individuals who are type A personality, who work around the clock, who are considered to be efficient and effective and on all the time, that tends to be rewarded in our corporate structure. When we look at women in the household as well, we see that, not only are they now responsible for managing their family and home, but now getting into the workforce and proclaiming to do it all. And so I think this idea of stress, we're seeing it completely permeate our whole culture of work life, family life, and we're not really given an option to be able to shift that from a fundamental level unless we take a step back and completely kind of revamp our perspectives of what is success, what is balance, and what is important in our lives. We know as a society that this needs to shift. And there's been a huge movement towards mindfulness and not only stress reduction strategies, but kind of understanding that space between the stress response or the trigger, and then how are you responding to that trigger? So mindfulness is one of, my favorite strategies to start teaching patients, looking at slowing down the response to stress, really focusing the body's attention, using our senses in the present moment. And there's a plethora of studies out there that shows the benefits of doing things like deep breathing, mindful eating, mindful walking, even, things like mindful yoga. It doesn't have to be sitting on a cushion and, sitting still for an hour to get these effects. We see that as the body and mind is really trained to be in the present moment, this downregulates the stress response and lowers our cortisol, reduces a number of genes that are turned on with the stress response in order to help to, turn off that nervous system or turn on the parasympathetic rest, relaxation, and digestion phase of the nervous system. So I would say that mindfulness is my go-to. Doing breathing exercises such as, square breathing is a very quick way to kind of shift the stress response. So just breathing in for the count of 4, hold for the count of 4, exhale for the count of 4, and then hold for the count of 4. And when you do that for, a 5-minute period, it's easy to see and feel the impact of that. And often with patients, I'll even take their blood pressure and then have them do a breathing exercise and then take their blood pressure again and show them the impact that that has.
That was naturopath Dr. Robin Murphy again. Some really good advice there. Something as simple as breathing properly can help so much. Tara Stiles is the founder of Strala Yoga, which combines yoga, Tai Chi, and traditional Chinese and Japanese medicine. Since Tara spends so much of her time helping people to de-stress and tune back into their bodies, I wanted to know what Tai Chi meant in the context of wellness.
Sure. Well, I'm not a master, an expert, anything at all. My husband grew up doing all this stuff, so I hear about it all the time. And whenever he talks about Tai Chi, it's sort of my naive feelings about yoga come up again. It's this moving in an energy efficient way, being self-aware, improving as you move instead of having the pose be the goal. This whole balance of harmony with yourself and with the people around you and yourself and nature. It's one of those ancient wisdoms that kind of applies to everything. And I think with yoga, it's a perfect thing to think about because we've somehow got to a point with yoga where, it's all about not just the pose, but we confuse alignment with doing good. And we confuse putting ourselves in a kind of fussy alignment and always fixing ourselves as alignment instead of how Tai Chi looks at alignment being an all the time situation. So you're constantly moving yourself in better alignment, moving more in harmony with yourself by how you move the whole time. And with yoga, we get really stuck in, okay, forget about how I'm going to get there. It's just a transition. Let me get to the next pose and then adjust my shirt, adjust my leg, adjust my shoulders, and then maybe something good will happen. Where, that's what we've kind of accepted as normal in yoga and also feels like life too. Whenever I get this thing, then I'm going to be happy. But with Tai Chi, it's sort of adjust yourself all the time. There's no mistake in moving in harmony because you're always flowing. And I think that's just so holistic. And it just feels to me like what a lot of us kind of collectively want right now is to feel better in the process while we're getting better. The coolest thing about these practices is it doesn't matter if you're on a yoga mat, it doesn't matter if you're in your Tai Chi outfit or whatever. You can be standing in line at the grocery store and soften your body a little bit. And I think that even word right there feels negative for so many people. They think soften and they think, oh, well, I'll be jiggly or wibbly or wobbly, or I'm not going to be as attractive as, I think I look when I'm holding myself together in this way. And I've seen in the last many years just saying that word and getting a horrified response, really. So, softness is really the thing that makes everything possible. A tree is not freaking out when the breeze comes by. The tree is strong because it has the ability to be moved by the wind. It's not saying, wind, come back tomorrow, I'll be ready for you. Or it's not resisting the breeze. It's being bendable by the breeze. And this is really how our bodies and minds and spirits, all of the stuff that makes us up work is being soft and being movable. And it's something, it doesn't have to be a whole intellectual or feel bad about yourself going down that road. It can literally be bending your joints a little bit, having a bit of an emotional softening, whatever that is for you, and then wiggling your body a little bit from your center, just rolling around a little bit, giving yourself a bit of a reset. And then you don't even have to breathe deep from that soft, movable place. Your breath starts to naturally be bigger and flow through you and actually move your body. We all in yoga inhale and then move up, and then we exhale and then push our way down. We don't have to do any of that. If we're soft, when we breathe in, we naturally move upward and outward like a big globe. And when we breathe out, we naturally come inward and relax. And we can really ride our breath just like riding a wave or enjoying a walk at the beach, or all of the reasons why we actually feel better when we're in nature. But when we remember that we're part of that and we do a simple practice to come back to that, then, I think that can be a real game changer.
When we're trying to make a shift in our lives, all it can take is one small thing to set us in the right direction. Perhaps for someone it could be listening to this podcast. My hope is to get this into as many ears as possible. So if you know somebody that's stuck and needs to make a shift, why not send them this podcast? It could be the one thing that sets them in the right direction.
The Shift!
While in the West we often see yoga as just a physical practice, it is actually a framework for health and healing. It's not about getting the pose right, but rather about your own self-awareness and embodiment. You can learn more about this in Tara Stiles' Expert Series episode, which is coming up soon. Make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss the release. There is some really interesting research coming out about the importance of our natural environment when it comes to stress. Dr. Suzanne Bartlett is an integrative doctor and forest therapist. Forest therapy is essentially just being in the forest, something that as humans we have done for millennia. With life being so hectic and us living in more densely populated cities, our exposure to nature is becoming less and less. Nature medicine is so important, and I asked Dr. Bartlett what the research was showing.
It continues to fascinate me. So these doctors in Japan, Dr. Lee in particular, one of the things that he has discovered and studied is this concept of the phytoncide. And so phytoncides, spelled Phytoncide, these are chemicals that are found in the essential oils of plants that we know exist for the plant to help the plant fight against bacteria and viruses and fungal infections, and also to reduce inflammation. And one of the things that he has been involved in researching is this idea that when we as humans come into contact with these phytoncides and we inhale them into our lungs, that we actually are deriving some of the benefit from these chemicals as well. And we've discovered that also the phytoncides work for us in terms of fighting bacteria and fungus and viral infections and to reduce inflammation. And I think that's so fascinating, especially right now while we're in the midst of a viral pandemic, that something as simple as being outdoors in nature and just smelling and breathing in the fragrances of the trees, and especially evergreen trees, can help us in this way. They've also found that the phytoncides increase our body's natural killer cells, or NK cells, in the body. And these cells sweep through the body to find bacteria and viruses and literally gobble them up. And the natural killer cells also work in the body to fight and locate and consume and destroy tumor cells. So the possibility that spending time in nature could reduce our chance of cancer is remarkable, I think. So again, I mentioned there are a number of studies finding that time in nature improves mental health and stress and things like that. There was one study that found that just 20 minutes of walking in nature versus walking in an urban setting reduces our levels of cortisol and alpha amylase in the saliva. So just 20 minutes in nature can benefit us in that way. There's one study that found that when college students take only 5 minutes outdoors, unplugged from their devices, that they have improvements in nearly all parameters of mental health. And when the researchers increased the amount of time in that study to 15 minutes, they found that 15 minutes didn't actually improve things at all. So even just 5 minutes of time outdoors can have health benefits, help our mental health.
Even just 5 minutes a day where we disconnect from our screens and reconnect with nature can be beneficial. What else can we learn from our ancestors when it comes to de-stressing? Dr. Kulreet Chowdhury is the author of a book called Sound Medicine, and her work is absolutely fascinating. She is the first Western-trained medical practitioner that has been allowed to examine the Siddha, 8,000-year-old medical texts. One of the concepts that she discovered was the use of sound as medicine, and I asked her to explain how this worked.
So first of all, sound medicine as a concept is something that is present in many, many ancient traditions. So I don't want, for people to have the misunderstanding that it's exclusively found in the Siddha text. The Siddha text is just one of those many ancient traditions that has been well preserved and has a very scientific explanation and approach to sound. So in terms of, addressing the skepticism, I think it's really important for people to understand that modern medicine uses sound both in diagnosis as well as a therapy. So this concept of using sound waves therapeutically is not controversial. It's something that we actually do pretty much on a daily basis in modern medicine. Anybody who has had an ultrasound, for example, that is a diagnostic tool as well as a therapeutic tool. It's used to treat certain conditions, and it's used to help to see inside of specific tissues. Any woman who's been pregnant has probably had an ultrasound of her baby to make sure that all the structures were normal. So ultrasound is a form of sound medicine. It's just inaudible sound, but we do know that sound frequencies have diagnostic as well as therapeutic value. If anybody's had a kidney stone, they may have been treated with lithotripsy. Lithotripsy is another form of sound medicine. So this concept that sound medicine is too out there, it's just simply a bias, but it's a bias that's not even rooted in any kind of logic, because we actually, as a medical community, have already used sound medicine. We use it on a regular basis. So it's not so much a question of, does sound medicine have its applications? It's more of a question of, what are all the applications? So that's the use of inaudible sound. And there's more and more and more uses of inaudible sound that are coming out now in modern medicine. Like, for example, there's a form of inaudible sound that is used to treat uterine fibroids without any surgery for women. And then there's the other part of it, which is the audible sound. And we have studies in that also. So there's the form of music therapy. And we've done, absolutely beautiful studies with music therapy in the treatment of PTSD, music therapy in the treatment of behavioral problems in Alzheimer's patients. So that too, we know, is a therapeutic modality. And then there is the use of sound internally. So sound as a silent repetition within your own mind. And oftentimes we don't look at the thoughts in our mind and the sounds that the brain is producing as actual sound that affects biology. But I think, for anybody who's in personal development, one of the foundations of personal development is overcoming the limiting thoughts that are constantly playing in your mind. So we know that our thoughts are a form of sound that impact both the body and the mind. And so there's been many, many hundreds of studies done in mantra meditation. So mantra meditation is another form of sound therapy where somebody repeats, it's typically a bija mantra, and a bija mantra is just a seed sound, meaning it's a sound with no meaning. It's a little bit like if we captured the sound of the ocean into a unisyllabic sound, that would be considered a bija mantra. These are sounds that resonate with frequencies in nature. And so, hundreds of studies done using bija mantra meditation as a form of sound therapy for cardiovascular disease. Transcendental meditation, which is a form of sound medicine, is actually one of the recommendations that is given by the American Cardiology Association. That's actually one of the recommendations they have for heart disease. And, that's been applied to other things like ADHD, anxiety, depression. So we're not really at a point scientifically where we have to debate the scientific validity of sound. We've already done that. And for people listening to this podcast, they might be saying, if we've already done that, why isn't this information that's disseminated? And that's because the science is growing around these types of vibrational medicine technologies far faster than the paradigm shifts that are necessary to embrace it. So what that means is we already know that the science is saying it's true, but we're not ready to believe it yet. And that is just the lag in human consciousness. It's just the lag in human belief systems where even when something is true based on scientific models, we're still not ready to accept it yet. So that's just the slowness of new thought, penetrating into a field such as the field of medicine. So that conversation in terms of is it valid or not, that's a conversation we could have had like maybe 20 or 30 years ago before we had all of this science that already says, yes, it is a valid approach. We're just simply not using it. And so when we look at the Siddha records, and again, this is true of many ancient traditions. The Siddha records are just the ones that they're by far one of the oldest and they're one of the most intact. When we look at the Siddha records, they describe sound as a therapeutic modality from a quantum level, meaning when they are describing the impact of sound, they're not just talking about the physical implications or the mental implications, although all of that is there and it's highly, highly prescriptive. Meaning if you're dealing with a certain part of the body, there's bija mantras that correlate to the resonant frequency of that part of the body. But they are also describing the science of sound from a quantum level. And, this is 8,000 years ago. We only recently have had that conceptual knowledge of quantum physics to begin having a conversation about quantum biology, which is essentially an application of quantum physics to human biology. How do you shift the human body and mind from the most fundamental level at which matter is created? Those were the kinds of dialogues, and that was the kind of work that the Siddhas were doing 8,000 years ago. Those are conversations that we in modern science are, and there's only a small percentage of us, are only starting to have right now. And so it's not so much the application of sound as a legitimate medical technology. We're already doing that, but it's actually understanding the science behind it so that we can, with greater knowledge and wisdom, apply it on a much broader front, so that instead of having to turn to, for example, antidepressants or chemotherapy, is there a way to apply sound as a technology for the treatment of things like depression and cancer?
Our modern society has taken out all of these opportunities to improve our mindset, our gut health. We have to be different. We can't do the status quo. So give an example. It's like in my culture where my parents came from, India, there were things built into the ancient cultures that did this. So for example, mind-body connection. So connecting your body to your mind can really be done by a series of activities like chanting, like humming, like singing, like praying. These are activating the vagus nerve, the connection between the brain and the body, and it puts you into a more relaxed state. And so I realized, like even the word Om has a humming sound at the end. These humming sounds are very calming to the nervous system and can put you in a better state of mind-body connection.
That was Dr. Amy Shah again. This makes total sense to me, and I think that we can be mindful of how we use sounds to manage how we feel. Noise pollution, for example, being exposed to loud traffic or building sounds all day, has been shown to profoundly impact our nervous system and our health. Conversely, playing soothing music has been shown to calm our nervous systems and help with stress. More from Dr. Chowdhury in her expert series, where she's also graciously offered to share one of her mantra meditation tracks with us for you all. Here is Dr. Shah again.
Traditionally, you usually ate a little bit after you woke up. You didn't roll out of bed and eat a bagel and juice. You would actually get up, do some things, maybe gather some food. Maybe you'd get together with your family and then you would eat. And then you would stop eating shortly after sundown. And that, to me, biologically, when I looked at it, wow, it made such a huge difference. Biologically, your body is programmed to stop its metabolic capabilities, or at least turn them down after a certain hour. Just like you wouldn't wake up in the middle of the night to do a difficult math problem, you shouldn't be asking your body to do metabolism in the middle of the night. These late hours are really, really stressful on the body. And just like, if I asked you to do a math problem in the middle of the night, you would get it wrong. It would require more effort. And in the morning, you would be exhausted. That's how our metabolism feels when we eat late at night and, don't let it get some rest. So I thought that a lot of these things were programmed into our culture, and most cultures around the world have this kind of programming into it. However, we've slowly taken all of that programming out. And so you have to reprogram that back in. So you have to be that weirdo that goes and gets daylight, natural light in the middle of the day or in the morning, and then again in the evening. And you will be that weirdo that might not eat that late dinner with the entire group because you've eaten an early dinner and you want to not stress your body with late food or drink. And you might be, strange for giving yourself some time during the day, very quick, 1 to 3 minute bouts of activities that improve your mind-body connection.
Reviews help us know that we're hitting the mark with what you need and help us to shape future seasons. I'd really appreciate it if you could take a few moments to leave us a review. I would love to know what you think.
The Shift!
I think that using stress management techniques like yoga, meditation, sound therapy, and breathing are all very important for us as women in this modern world. And as Dr. Shah mentioned, we really do need to change the way that we're existing and honour what it is that our bodies need. But what really needs to change is our internal narrative, that voice inside us that creates an incredible amount of internal stress for ourselves. This is linked to your emotional well-being, and we're going to go deeper with this in episode 12. But here's what Dr. Libby had to say when I asked her if we could change our inner narrative.
I call it a truth warrior. So because it's so ingrained, we don't always catch it in action. In the moment in the supermarket when Mrs. Smith walks past us, we're not often aware that that's hurt our feelings. It's later, an hour later, 4 hours later, when we are making some lousy choices. It's when you get a shift in the way that you feel that you want to question it and you want to be on a mission for the truth, for actuality, not the reality you're perceiving. So it's like a commitment to exercise. It's like a commitment to meditation. Any kind of commitment we make, in a way, requires a discipline. And I think it's the same kind of thing we need to apply to start to change the way that we think. So it can help to have a little notebook in the kitchen where you jot things down if writing things down helps someone. You can do it in your head. You can just pause and think, okay, when I went to the supermarket, I felt fine. An hour later, I didn't, and bring curiosity to that, not any kind of judgment about yourself, because you might have gone home and polished off a whole packet of biscuits. And instead of the judgment from eating the biscuits, you want to bring curiosity to that. Okay, I wonder what led me to do that. Was I hungry? Was I overdue for my lunch? Was it an actual physical need? Okay, I probably need to be a bit better prepared if that was the case and have some leftovers in the fridge ready to go so I don't demolish all the biscuits. Or was it emotional? Oh, yes, Mrs. Smith didn't speak to me in the supermarket. I can actually see that's hurt my feelings. Yes, I can see that I'm worried what she thinks of me. And that's when you bring that second brain in, that new brain in, to really start to examine that. And it might require courage, because you might need to ring Mrs. Smith up to reassure yourself that she's not upset with you, for example. It's seeing the stories that we make up for each individual, to see the story they've created in that moment about who they must be for Mrs. Smith not to have spoken to them. And it's always some form of disapproval. That's what you're looking for. And it's just a pattern that we pick up as we're growing up, as a way that we think that people see us, and that's what we need to undo.
No matter which way you look at it, if you want to be well, have healthy hormones and thrive in your life, you need to look at your stress. How are you existing? Have you set up your life, your routines, your schedule to serve you or to keep you busy and overwhelmed? Are you practicing self-care and supporting yourself so that you can make a shift? Your mind and body are one. And no matter how many herbs you take or workouts you do, if you don't become fully aware of your stress story and what works for you, it will be really difficult to make the shift. So take a moment to reflect. What do you need to do next? What are the things that are holding you back? If any of the parts of this episode brought up emotions or triggered you in any way, maybe ask yourself what is behind that. We're going to expand on some of these themes in episode 12, where we look at your emotional health as a woman. In the next episode, we're going to take a look at your thyroid function and how it keeps us in balance every day.
Coming up on The Shift.
Feeling sluggish, fatigue. I couldn't sleep more than 4 or 5 hours.
Brain fog.
Depression.
My moods were sort of all over the place.
irregular periods. I put on weight, major sinus issues, skin issues. I had 2/3 of my eyebrows, my hair fell out in great lumps.
These are all symptoms of hypothyroidism. 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with a thyroid condition in their lifetime.
This series is a production of the Shift Clinic. Hosted by Katherine Maslen. Music and sound design by Shade Furlong. Thank you to all of our experts. For more details on them, go to theshiftclinic.com.
We can be. We must be.
The first generation to end extreme poverty.
The generation most determined to fight injustice
and inequality.
The generation that saves the planet
from climate change.
And this is how we will get it done.
The Global Goals.
A 15-year plan for everyone, everywhere.
With no one left behind.
The Global Goals are a framework that collectively help us
support the health of our people
and the planet.
At Shift, we are ambassadors for the Global Goals.
This project supports Global Goal number 6.
Clean water and sanitation.
Every time you listen
to an episode of The Shift,
we provide a day's access to clean water
for a human in need
in Malawi, Africa.
Water is the foundation to health, and we believe
every human should have access
to clean, healthy water.
So please share this podcast wide
and keep tuning in
so we can impact those who need it the most.